So if you'd met me 12 years ago, you would have never thought I would be speaking to you today. You would have found me in some nightclub, in the VIP room, drinking bottles of vodka and pretentiously holding out my Rolex watch so that you would notice that I actually had an expensive watch, which is what I thought was important at the time. If you had met me around noon the next day and we were still partying, it would have looked a little less pretty. Maybe some cocaine, some ecstasy, some MDMA, some gambling. Maybe we were off to a strip club. Pretty dark life. So I spent 10 years as a nightclub promoter, getting people wasted for a living. This was an act of rebellion against my very conservative upbringing, and I couldn't believe that you could actually get paid to drink for free. Like that this was a job in New York City. So, it looked great on the outside. I was kind of rotting inside after these 10 years, and I hit a point at 28 years old where I drove a BMW, I had a grand piano in my New York apartment, my girlfriend was in the cover of Elle magazine at the time, and I was in this opulent vacation where we'd rented a huge house in Uruguay with servants and horses, and we spent $1,000 on fireworks, and there were magnums of Dom Perignon, and this is everything we'd hoped for. And I was the worst person that I knew. I was spiritually bankrupt, I was morally bankrupt, I had betrayed all the values that I've been brought up with. And I realized that if I continued down this path, the legacy I was leaving was just, my tombstone would read, "Here lies Scott Harrison, who got 10 million people drunk," over the course of his life. So I had a serious change. I came back to New York City, I sold everything I owned. I put 2,000 DVDs on eBay in a single lot, just trying to purge my old life. And I wanted to try and experience the opposite of my selfish, sycophantic, hedonistic life. And I wanted to volunteer and serve the poor for a year. So I applied to a bunch of organizations. No one will take me because, they're serious people and I'm a nightclub promoter. And eventually one organization said if I was willing to go live in Liberia and pay them $500 a month, that I could volunteer. So very, very long story, but a year turned into 2 years. And when I was in Liberia, when I was in West Africa, I came across the water crisis. And I saw people drink dirty water for the first time in my life. Now, I had been selling bottles of Voss water for $10 to people in clubs who wouldn't even open the water. They would just put it on their table as a sign of affluence. And I met kids like John Bosco, who were drinking from swamps. I saw kids drinking water from rivers that would vomit on their shirts. As they took water like this. If we put it under a microscope, it was alive. And I started to learn about the water crisis and that 52% of disease throughout the developing world was caused by bad water and a lack of toilets. And I just couldn't believe that human beings were living like this, and I had been partying for a lifetime. And I wondered if maybe I could use some of the things that I'd learned over a decade in storytelling, telling the story that if you get past the velvet rope and get drunk with the right pretty people in the clubs, then your life had meaning. You'd arrived. Maybe I could use that and tell a very different story. So there were 663 million people today living without access to clean water. It's a tenth of the planet. People just numb out when they hear things like this. We've never seen 663 million people anywhere doing anything. And it's so hard with issues like this. You heard from Nick, schistosomiasis. I've been talking about schistosomiasis for 10 years. I love this guy. No one has ever talked about this before. These diseases that are caused by bad water, my job was going to be to try to get people to care and to try to work on the water issue. So I came back 10 years ago. I started Charity Water, and I just thought, what a great issue. If you were going to get people to care about an issue that didn't affect them, something they had never experienced, water was a pretty good one. Right? Regardless of your religion or your politics or your geography, every human being can stand for clean water for others. And 660 million people don't have it. Right? No one in this room, no audience I talk to, wants kids to drink dirty swamp, pond water that could kill them. It's just nobody wants it to happen. But yet there weren't the resources allocated towards this problem. So that's what I've been working on. However, as I talked to my friends, I realized there was an even bigger problem. And if we were going to make a dent in the water crisis, we would need a completely new way to do charity for people my age and younger. So I had the advantage of being 30. I didn't know anybody in the charitable space, but I knew my friends were not giving because they didn't trust big charities. Learned the data behind this. 42% of Americans distrust charity. But we have this unbelievable reputation for being generous and philanthropic. 70% of Americans think charities waste money or badly waste money. So this was the real problem I was going to try to solve. To help bring clean drinking water to people in need, we would need a new way of getting all of these disenchanted, disenfranchised people who should be giving, who are missing out on the joy of being generous and engaging and using their time and their talent in the service, their money in the service of others. So I had a couple of big ideas. One was, could we solve the money problem? Could we find a way to give away 100% of every donation we would ever raise in the history of the organization from the public would only go concretely to build water projects around the world and give people clean water in a provable, measurable manner. So people say, well, this is the stupidest thing we've ever heard. How will you pay for your overhead or your office or your staff one day? I didn't know, but I opened up 2 separate bank accounts with $100 each and said, we're going to figure it out. And over time, we did. We got tech entrepreneurs excited about overhead. And the organization has been supported by 117 families. We call them The Well. And people like Daniel Eck and Jock Dorsey and Michael Birch and Angela Ahrens and Johnny Ive and Sean Parker and some of the founders of some of the biggest companies that we know, they said, we want to pay for your overhead. We love this. We'll pay for your software engineers, your water engineers, your office, your flights around the world. 117 families, venture capitalists like Chris Sacca and John Doerr, people in Hollywood, and entertainment like Ed Norton and Depeche Mode. A random collection of 117 friends says, we have your back. Go to market with this 100% model. The second thing was, because money would not be fungible with the organization, we could actually prove every single dollar. We even pay back credit card fees. So if someone gives $1,000 and we get $980, we make up the difference and we send $1,000 to the field. So we said, let's put every water point we ever fund up on Google Earth and Google Maps. So the public could go get a $50 handheld GPS device and go to all the projects. So we just made an early bet on transparency, said in the future, charities will not be able to hide. And if they do bad work, then you're going to be able to find them out. And we wanted to be accountable to the sustainability of our programs over time. I also wanted to build a beautiful brand. As I looked at the charitable sector, there was no Nike, there was no Apple, there was no Virgin. Charity brands sucked. They had terrible websites. Charity brands, billion-dollar charities today are sending me non-mobile optimized emails. 40% of the people opening their emails are opening them on mobile. And 10 years ago, it was even worse. Charities use guilt and shame to peddle their wares. They try and make people feel horrible, so they reach into their pocket and then give. Nick Kristof had written in the New York Times that toothpaste is peddled with far more sophistication than all the world's life-saving causes. Why is it okay for junk food companies to spend hundreds of millions of dollars trying to kill us and our children, and the most important causes, saving people's lives around the world, have anemic brands? So I thought you didn't need a lot of money to build a brand. You needed to get good designers. You needed to care about the way you presented the brand and the way you needed to care about the way things looked. We worked through local partners. We would never send Westerners to Africa or India or Asia or South America. We would find and identify the local organizations on the ground. We believe for work to be sustainable, it had to be led by the people in the country. So our role would be to get people to care about water, the suffering of people thousands of miles away, raise money as efficiently as possible from the public at 100%, and then grow through local partners. We built a digital-first business. We never direct mailed because we thought that was stupid. People aren't writing checks anymore, so we were the first charity to get 1 million Twitter followers, first charity to use Instagram, trying to build community on social. We believe this is how the movements of the future would grow. This is how stories would spread. And we just kept trying to find new ways to be radically transparent, building online tools that could track a 6-year-old's donation of $1 all the way down to the photos and the GPS of the village in Malawi where it was funded. We started crowdsourcing drilling rigs, and we mounted GPS units to them. We built online tracking systems so people could actually see where our rigs were in real time. We gave them Twitter accounts, and we taught our Ethiopian drillers to press the button and tweet every time they were about to drill a well. Just a sense of connection. The organization scaled to 23,000 water projects across 24 different countries. And about 5 years ago, we realized we had another problem. We knew they were all built. We knew water was flowing on day one. We had tested it. It was clean. 5 years later, if a donor said, well, how's my well doing? We really didn't know. We had trained the community. We'd handed it over. We'd done all the best practices in the sector. So we went to Google and said, we have this crazy idea. What if we could build a sensor that would work in these remote, rural operating environments? We'd open source the whole thing, and then we could know, are these projects effective years later? Google awarded us a $5 million grant, and we worked with 20 different labs, built a sensor. This is the pilot for $100, protecting a $10,000 well asset. And we dropped 3,500 in the pilot. And it's just a simple kind of gray box. The minute we did that, we amassed the largest data set of rural water supply in the history of the world, because nobody had bothered to do this before. These are poor people living in the middle of nowhere in rural environments across the world. Now what we're able to do is go to donors, whether it's Daniel Eck, who did a project 5 years ago, or a 9-year-old girl, we're able to pinpoint their actual project and say, you know, not only here's the picture, not only here's the GPS map of that, but here's how much water is flowing daily 5 years later. And we can zoom in and see what time people are getting up in the morning, what time they're using in the afternoon. We could see that last Thursday, for example, 2,329 liters flowed from Daniel Eck's well 5 years ago in the middle of Ethiopia. This has just never been done before, and we're about to launch another sensor in Nepal for a pipe sensor, and we're working on one in India as well. In 10 years, we raised about $250 million from 1 million people, so the organization grew really quickly. We've been able to help 7 million people get access to clean water. And just one last thing I'll talk about with innovation. We're trying to use any new tool of technology to tell the story, get people to care. So when we saw VR 2 years ago, we made a rig out of GoPros, 8 GoPros taped together on a stick. We shot our first VR film of this beautiful 13-year-old girl named Salam, and the 6 days where she gets clean water in her entire life. You put on the headset, you're with her at the swamp, watching this girl drink water with her cattle, and then you see the rig being drilled. At the end of it, you see her life change 6 days later. We took this to our gala in New York City. We did the largest charity VR screening in simultaneity. We put VR headsets on all 400 people at the same time after their fancy dinner and black tie. We press play. 8 minutes later, the minute they took off the VR headsets, we said, can you please donate money? They raised $2.4 million for 240 villages. One guy walked into our office, watched the film, weeping, wrote a $400,000 check for 44 villages. We flew in just to show Salam what her story was like and tell her about the impact that her 6-day journey was having on hundreds and hundreds of more villages, tens of thousands of more girls like her. So as we kind of embark on a new decade, this is year 11, we've only gotten 1% of the global problem solved. We have 1% market share, the way some of you would think about it. So we have a lot of work to do. 7 million people is great. We're helping 2,840 people every single day get every day get water for the first time. But it's not enough. And I was in Ethiopia recently with a 13-year-old girl had hung herself after spilling her water after an 8-hour journey. And it's an emergency out there, and in between these huge statistics are real people that have hopes and dreams and are caught in the water crisis. And that's what we're continuing to fight. It's been great to work with David, the whole team at Founders Pledge, with Brent and Johnny. I think about 25 founders have chosen us. We've had some exits already. And it's an amazing way to involve entrepreneurs, the next breed of entrepreneurs, to help us try and end the water crisis and continue to innovate. This is my email. If you guys have any questions for me, I know there'll be Q&A for the panel, but that's for these guys. Reach out directly if you'd like to get involved. If you have questions, comments, thoughts, I'm very easy to get. Scott@cherrywater.org. Thank you guys so much.